So, welcome everybody to Cinematic Conversations. It is a lovely Thursday evening in Dallas, Texas. It's not too hot yet, and it's like a nice time to like be outside. So, thank you for being inside with us and watching your computer, which of course you've been doing for the last year. So today we have a very special guest, and Danielle Danielle Giorgio is a gift to the Dallas community. I've known Danielle for a long time and she did a lot of great video work, and she did a lot of dance work, and she sort of melds the two of them. And to my way of thinking, last year when the pandemic hit us and a lot of people in the arts community were struggling to figure out how we survive and what do we do. And Danielle was perfectly situated because she has a background in film production and video art and a really good, strong way of thinking about what a camera can do, and a just incredibly, great background in dance. And these two things worked really well. And this has been a really great year for you. So Danielle, thank you for coming to Cinematic Conversations this week.
Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to be here.
So tell me a little bit about like when you started getting into dance.
Um, I've danced like my entire life. There's not a moment in time for me in my memory that I wasn't dancing. Uh, I think I think my parents were like, this child has far too much energy. She has to do something other than running around and playing hide and seek in the dresser drawers of our house. So they put me in dance classes when I was 3 years old. And then I like distinctly remember watching Macaulay Culkin in a version of the Nutcracker and telling my parents that's what I want to do.
Mm.
I don't know if I meant like I wanted to be like Macaulay Culkin, which is, valid, or if I wanted to dance forever. And they were like, okay, if you want to be a dancer, you can be a dancer. And I never stopped.
So did you go to like ballet lessons when you were like really little and sort
There,
of
sorry.
more
That even better.
classically
I
trained?
turned it down even lower. The voice is a little annoying. I like her a lot, but that's why.
There we go. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I started in ballet
Mhm.
from a very young age. I was that like small little bunhead girl. I still am a bunhead. And I like gravitated towards it. I loved it. It's it always like I don't know, when I was in a dance studio, I just felt I think most like myself, and that has not changed. If
And
I'm
then
not dancing, I feel very strange.
when did you move away from ballet?
It was probably when I was in high school, and I had modern dance teachers at the high school that I went to, and that sort of gave me a freedom I hadn't felt before in ballet.
Mhm.
Um, and I felt very accepted by modern dancers for the type of mover that I am, the type of also thinker that I was. Even in high school, I was sort of a very out there theater kid in the dance world and wanted to do more than just lovely stories. I wanted to make affecting artwork,
Mhm.
um, and modern sort of gave me that outlet.
And then how did you sort of move into being a dancer to being a choreographer?
That all happened at UTA, actually, when I was an undergrad there.
Mhm.
I was a member of the dance company. And probably when I was a junior, the directors of that company were like, would you like to create a work for our stage? And I said, oh, sure. I think I know how to do that. And I mean, with their guidance, I attempted to be a choreographer for the first time. And I think I'm still always attempting to be a choreographer and learning new ways to tell stories. But even from like, I was probably 20 years old at that time,
Mhm.
what was most important to me when I was making dances was that they were very human and very organic, and they felt like they came truly from the performer themselves and not from me. I was very much interested in exposing those dancers' stories to the world, as opposed to like my internal stories.
So then why did you start to get into doing video work with your dance?
Um, you know, I think it just happened kind of organically. One day there's I would bring up UTA again because this is where I met Bart. There's a black box in the fine arts building, and I had access to it and this is when I was I was teaching actually at UTA at the time and in grad school at UTD, and I had to make a project for one of my classes, and I was super stuck. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I had some of my students, and I said, hey, will you guys jump into this trash can for me? And I'm just gonna, it's really how it went. I'm just gonna turn this camera on and like, let's explore this object and see what we can come up with. And from that experiment, it turned into a short film based on Samuel Beckett's Endgame that kind of launched me into making videos. And some of my professors at UTD saw it and they were like, you know, you are a performer, you've done a lot of theater, you've done a lot of dance, but you might be onto something here with these wacky little videos you make. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I just kept going. And it, that just small little piece of advice from Fred Kirchek,
Yeah.
really started it all for me. And that was in 2008. And I was shooting on just like a small little camera, I think that my parents had that they were going to throw away. And yeah, I've never stopped making videos for the last, I can't do math right now, 13 years.
And that really made a difference. I also think that the time when you were at UTD, there was like a really interesting group of people there that you worked with that I think were, which is sort of what one hopes for in a graduate program, that there's collaborators of different sorts working together to sort of create different kinds of bodies of work and energy. I think that was really, you know, kind of magnificent. So then how out of all of this did you go about to form your own company, which is like a really great thing?
That actually started with a dance film that I collaborated on with Luis Medense, who was a grad student at UTD and a like beautiful and celebrated filmmaker from Guatemala and director. And we were in a class together and we were working on separate projects. It was a film class, and I was like, I have this idea for a music video. Would you like to make it with me? And we contacted this band Phoenix, who was hot for a while, still hot on my playlist, but maybe not for everybody else. And they gave us the rights to this one song, and we made a dance film music video. And I submitted it to the Dallas Video Fest, and got a lot of attention, and it got the attention of Unique at the South Dallas Cultural Center, and she selected me to be one of the artists in Dallas to be represented at the National Performance Network's annual conference.
Wow.
And I got the attention of Cora Cardona, who founded Teatro Dallas. And about a month after that presentation, she called me and offered me a 2-week residency at her theater. And she asked me, what's the name of your dance company? And I was like, I don't know. And my friend, we like literally just gotten off a plane from Ireland, where we were visiting some friends and doing some dance work out there. And she was like, just call it the Danielle Giorgio Dance Group because your initials are DG, like dance group.
Yes.
I was like, okay, great. So that's what I told Cora. And 11 years later, we're still DG, and we're still making dance theater and dance films.
What a journey. I mean, could you have imagined this when you said those words, what you would be doing all these years?
No, I thought I'm gonna do one show. Someone's gonna, they gave me this chance. We'll see what happens. Because at that time, the course of my life really was about video work. I was working steadily in that. I was focused on that at UTD.
Mhm,
I was just about to enter an artist residency at Central Track. So
mhm.
I didn't know that dance was going to like really start to take over my life, or that I could really combine the two art worlds that I work in to make one, because I considered like the music videos and films I was making separate from the dance works I would make for stage. And it really wasn't until Rome, which got into the video fest that you saw, and Cora, like talking to both of you and like realizing I could, combine all of these things into making these bizarre creations of multimedia that I consider my work to be now,
Yeah.
something that was valid.
Yeah. So then along comes about a year ago, and the world changed as we know it. And you were starting this really ambitious project. And I think the way in which you changed on a dime, and the way in which you thoughtfully produce this, is such a role model for how artists can both change and also do something really important um, with adversity. So you want to talk about how the project evolved and then how it shifted.
Sure. So, wow, I can't believe it's been a year. So about a year ago, this month, really, we were, my partner and I, Justin Locklear, were really focused on creating this multimedia, contemporary, experimental opera. We've never made an opera before, so that was an adventure. And at this time, no one really knew what the pandemic was how it was going to evolve, what it would be for us. So it was like every week you would talk to theater companies or artists, and they're like, well, in a month, things will be different. We'll be back to normal. So you're just like working towards normalcy. And as time went on, it was very quickly evident that normal wasn't going to be something we were going to be returning to anytime soon.
Mm.
And Justin and I had been dreaming of this project for 5 years. And we just said, we're going to figure out a way to do it. And we're going to figure out a way to do it safely, because we have to keep making art. It was so strange because it felt almost immediate that there was like an emptiness that came on during quarantine, even though you had access to so many pieces of art that you could watch. Like, not making was devastating. And we had all these performers lined up, and they were committed to the project, and they were also like, we want to do this, and we trust you, and we know that you can lead us safely through this process. So we decided that we would not make it an opera in the original way we thought we were going to do it with singers, that we were going to instead create a musical score that would be operatic, but would kind of test and push the envelope a little bit, with our composer, Donovan Jones, who is also known as Black Taffy. And we started doing as much research as we could about how film companies and TV shows were going about producing work during the pandemic. So whatever we could find, we would just copy and paste their rules and protocols. And everything that the CDC would update, we would update our health and safety protocols. And we were in a very lucky position that we could ask all of the actors involved to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. And
I just
basically,
want to pause on that for a second.
yeah,
All of your actors had to self quarantine.
yes.
That's dedication from your actors, and it's a lot to ask
Mhm.
for this. But but it was very important, because then everybody could feel better about being there.
Yes, yeah. And they were so quick to agree to do it. And luckily we had some that were already living together in a pod, so that made life a little bit simpler for us. But they all agreed to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. They agreed to go through all of our questionnaire process, to have their temperatures taken, to stay masked unless we were filming, and get tested. And this was even before testing was like readily available. They knew that if anything came up, they would have to get tested and they would be removed from the project basically until they could return to it, or we could figure out a way to film them from a distance. But we were very lucky because the self-quarantine worked and we could film, and it was a short filming process. It was 6 days, which making a feature-length film in 6 days is
Insane.
insane. I don't know how we did. I mean, our days were long days, very long days.
And
But
it's physical work. I mean, dancing is
mhm,
not easy. There's a lot of art direction. I mean, this is not, you know, a low budget film has a lot of, you make up with extra work that you do because you don't have the money to just pay somebody to do something quickly.
yep,
And it's just a lot of craft and hard, literally hard labor. And it's 6 days is just a ridiculous amount of time to get something. But on the other day, every day you go longer is more of a chance of something go wrong.
yeah, yeah.
And so,
So
yeah.
so we knew we had to do it quick.
So you make the project. It's really great. I loved it. It's like one of my favorite things that came out of the pandemic. And,
Thank you.
you know, I'm happy to promote it any place I can. So now you're known as a person who knows how to do this. How did you start interfacing with other arts organizations? Like, hey, tell me what to do.
Yeah, so I'm the artistic director of the Daniel Giorgio Dance Group, but I'm also the associate artistic director of Undermain Theater. And the Savage Seconds, which was the feature-length film that DGDG made, actually became like an example for Undermain for how we could, as a theater company, continue to produce work. So I took everything I learned making Savage and just brought all of that information to Undermain and said, I did it. I can do it. We can do it. We just have to really follow this structure. And at that same time, other theater companies were coming forward with their protocols to make more work. And I was able to share my knowledge with my colleagues at Theater 3,
Yeah.
where we produced a show in October. And then I also worked on another film production at Kitchen Dog Theater, and I was able to also share my experiences of making a pandemic film and or theater project with these other companies. And we had a lot of freelance artists contact us after Savage came out and said, will you please like walk us through this process? So Justin and I created a document that kind of was just a step-by-step instruction of how to make a COVID safe film.
And so, so now that this pandemic is, it's not quite over, but things are starting to open up.
Mhm.
What is DGDG doing, and what are you doing to move into the new world that is hopefully emerging for us?
Well, we've already started last month in April. Gigi had performed at Art Stillery for Art Cultivation, which is an outdoor performance series. So we've already done our first live in-person performance for the largest crowd I had seen in a long time. And it felt great. I didn't expect myself to get extremely emotional, but I kind of like lost myself in the performance for a minute, and because it felt really good to be back on stage. And we are about to premiere a new film that we shot last week. And then we are gearing up for performances in early fall and early to mid fall.
And you will show me that new film that you were just showing
Oh,
me.
absolutely. I'm almost done editing it.
Yeah.
But I'm also working with another dance theater company,
Mm.
very good dance theater, and we are premiering a new work at the Wiley Theater for the Elevator Project at the end of this month.
So let's talk about this movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
It was just wonderful to hear your journey and your story, and I've never really asked you about that. So thank you, all of you, for indulging me, because it was just a good thing to know. So first, why did you pick this film?
So this was actually recommended by Raquel
Oh,
to me.
good.
And I'm so glad that she did, because I had seen clips of this sort of floating around,
Mhm.
and I was very curious what the film was. And then when she recommended it to me, I was like, okay, great. And then I watched it, and I emailed her and I was like, I have to watch this movie again because it is everything that I have needed this year is encompassed in this film.
Will you explain that for me?
Absolutely. So another round is about these 4 middle-aged teachers kind of being thrust into a midlife crisis, not of their own doing, but just by life circumstances, and they're stuck in their positions at this school and their positions at home and in life, and they want to experience joy again. And they set about doing that by this really great, wild sort of psychological, philosophical experiment about, if you just had like a little bit of alcohol every day,
0.5.
0.5% of alcohol a day would just like open you up to the world. And the question is, like, would it make you, for one of the characters, like, would it make you a better teacher? And as an as an educator, it resonated with me so deep, because this year has been, or well, this will be now the 3rd semester of like online hybrid teaching, has been the hardest moment of my teaching career. I mean, I've been teaching for 14 years, and I've never experienced anything like this. And that feeling of just being stuck and being a really terrible teacher who can't do their job anymore, and you're failing your students, which is what happens. I at the beginning I had to pause, because I was like, this is my story, and I don't know if I'm ready to watch myself watch somebody live my life out on film. And you're constantly searching for a way to be better in this world that we live in, where we're stuck in these boxes. And
it's so true. It's like I've been talking to this very screen that I'm talking to right now, literally for a year. And the first few months, there was this excitement about how do we transform? What do we do? How do we do all this other stuff? And there was a lot of really kind of interesting things. But I tell you that I struggle with, students don't have their images on, so you're just talking into the ether. You don't know if they're listening. How do you get somebody to get the exposure right when you're not sitting in the room with them with their hands on the equipment? And it's really, I've been teaching for a long time, and I think I'm a good teacher. I mostly am a good teacher. And I had moments this year, I would say in the last 2 months, where I've questioned, have I lost my mojo as a teacher?
mm-hmm.
And I really sort of question, where am I with this? And you're right, this film sort of deals with you as a sense of being stuck. I mean, clearly when this film was made, none of this was going on. This was not in people's, consciousness. And on one level, it's so much about alcohol and the effects of alcohol on people.
Mhm.
But you're so right in that there are so many people that are stuck and looking for something.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this film, like in the beginning, when you know he has like his classes aren't going well, he's called into the group with all these people, and the parents are, this test, are they going to pass their test, and he's like, what's going on? I mean, in a sense, he's not conscious that he's not teaching well, and that's kind of the wake up call to make him think about what he's doing and how,
Mhm.
you know, how he's doing that. And then there's that incredible scene where they're eating dinner at this place, and you're like, I want to be that guy's friend who can give me, like, we want this, no problem, have some more, have some more of this, have some more of that, you know, like, yeah, fine. I don't have any friends that go to a restaurant like that and just like get whatever they want.
Me either.
But magical thinking, not that I probably would do it anyway. But the idea of them sort of getting to that place and just sort of being in a moment where they're sort of receptive to that. But then, you know, getting to this thing about teaching, the moment where she's teaching and all of a sudden she has that spark that he's lost is really so important in this film. It's like, and first of all, we have to say, Matt's, I mean, like, what a friggin' performance.
Yeah. I was stunning.
And yeah,
It felt like I was watching real people. I wasn't watching actors. In the entire film, I never thought, I forgot that I was watching this like very famous actor. I
yeah.
thought I was just watching a person who could be teaching next door to me and his group of friends.
But so much of Matt's performance is like in his look. I mean, there's a close up of him that's there for a while, and you see his eyes.
Hmm.
And you know, it's not in the writing, although the writing is good,
Hmm.
but so much of his performance, and I mean, the other actors are really good, but it all really, we feel everything through his feeling and through his eyes are so much of what's revealing. Raquel said that Mads was trained at the Martha Graham Dance Theater, which I did not know. So Raquel wants to know, can you talk us a little bit about what Martha Graham's style is? And is this anything that Mads did in that Martha Graham?
So she's considered like the mother of
Modern dance.
modern dance. And he, I think, spent a year training with the company in the 80s. And you can see it. You can see it in, I mean, particularly the end sequence. There are these moments of just like release where he's just sort of throwing his body forward and sinking back in. I'm a dance teacher, so I will demonstrate with my body now. Yeah. But also this idea of like explosive movement comes from Martha Graham's style. And there's like an exuberance to it, which I think very, very simply is like displayed in that final sequence. But also what's like really incredible about her style is that it was very gestural, but also very much concentrated on emotionally projecting through the face. So, you know, I'm sure all of his dance training, but that year with her has probably stuck with him in how he addresses the camera and how emotive he is.
And if you think about that last scene,
to be emotive.
Yeah, that last scene where he's dancing was just really great. I mean, it's like the whole, that last 5 minutes is like a whole nother movie at the end of this movie, which is really kind of great. And then you see all the kids like drinking with their funny hats on. Mm-hmm. I'd like to have one of those funny hats.
Yeah.
Like when I graduated, I didn't get a funny hat. And I didn't drink a lot either when I graduated. I just had more work to do. So on to the next thing, you know. But drinking is, you know, very much a part of the code. But he does like a little bit of dance, and then he's sitting on the bench. Mm-hmm. and then he kind of explodes. It's like that moment where it's like he's come to peace with himself, and he's unlocked the last part of whatever was keeping him back. And for his character, being that he was, as it's established very early on, that he went to dance classes, that is sort of like the last thing. And that motion at the end, I think, is just really great. I mean, there's dance before that in that scene, but the dance after that like hits another level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought it was really charming that they kept saying that he did jazz ballet.
Yeah.
Which
Is that a thing?
No, yes, it can be. I always joke around that I teach jazz ballet, so that made me laugh because I was like, yeah, that I know what jazz ballet looks like. And that's like how I would classify the end of this film. I would call that like a jazz ballet that he did. And that final, like the freeze frame that happens at the end when he's just like soaring out into the water, just is like this iconic action of your future. Like this is your future self. And it goes along with that Kierkegaard quote that starts the film as well, that, you know, this is love, and it will let you soar if you allow yourself to be content where you are, which to me is what that final end dance sequence really expressed. Was, I think, pure catharsis, but also contentment. It's just, this is the cards that these are the cards that life has dealt you. And you could give up, you could seek escape like Tommy did, or you could, as he told Mads' character, there's a future for you, there's hope for you, and I have hope for you. And you can take that advice and that like kernel of joy that somebody's willing to pass on to you and soar into the future and leave, you know, accept your past self, but leave your present self behind. And I thought it was just a very smart decision by the writer and the director to really push for dance to happen. Because I know I was reading that at first Mads was very like hesitant to do the dance. That he was like, I haven't danced in 30 years. I don't know. We'll talk about it. And then
all of that is just like fear that it's not going to come off looking well. Because, you know, every actor is like nervous. Am I going, can I still do it? Right? You know, if you haven't done something for 30 years and you're going to be up on the screen for everybody to see and every possible flaw, I'd be nervous.
Oh yeah. And I work with a lot of actors that are like, I'm not a dancer, I'm not a mover, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, don't worry. Dance is for everybody. You just have to like release and let go and just have fun. And once you do that, you know, you're gonna have a good time, and the audience watching you is going to have a good time. Like Raquel said, that casting directors like to cast dancers as extras because they have good comportment, and it's totally true. They love it.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a dancer.
Now, I don't know if I ever told you this, but you know, my early films were experimental films, and there was this moment where I made dance films because, to me, dance films allowed me to take the abstract issues of space and time and movement and have a human face to it. It was a way for me to start to direct people and to get to work with that. And for a long time, that was like my primary way of sort of thinking about movie making, was making dance films. That was a long time ago. It was a very long time ago. So one of the things that this film is sort of at its core, and certainly in the name of it, is alcohol. And it's a really kind of tricky thing because alcohol is the trigger that opens their lives. But it opens them in ways that can be really great, and that could also be very tragic. And the film sort of deals with that, but it doesn't, it's like in its heart, the film sort of encourages you to drink, as here, I'll have another drink here. Now, I normally do not drink this much. If you remember, I was in the club business in the 80s. I had enough to drink during those times. You really don't need to drink that much more. But even during those years, I would see a lot of people whose lives were ruined both by alcohol and, well, being it was in the 80s, by cocaine.
Mhm.
And there is the sense that once you open this door, once you put the key in there, it is unknown where it goes. And there are some people that can control it, and some people for whom, could you just imagine yourself going into a faculty meeting and just like falling all over the place and fall?
No, I wouldn't have a job anymore.
Right. But in these days, my gosh, these days, if somebody just found alcohol, they'd like fingerprint it and everybody bring everybody in and find out who it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, teaching is, just say there are a lot of administrators who are following what we're doing. And, I think if even there was a suspicion that somebody was drunk while they were teaching, that would be sort of a problem. But
Mhm.
but it does sort of encourage people to explore, to get out there. I mean, bookended in the film, aside from his story, are the kids. So remember, the first scene is the kids with the drinking and over drinking to
Mhm.
excess.
Mhm.
And then, even when he's teaching his kids, when he's like making that sense of transformation, there's that one kid who drinks ridiculous. How much do you drink? And it's like, are you still live and conscious?
Yeah, I don't know how 50, this was like 55 drinks
Drinks
a
a week.
week. Like you're a walking um canteen, like it doesn't make sense.
And I think part of that is somewhat cultural to Scandinavia, that maybe
Sure.
there's a little more drinking there. And there's like, there's several times when they're talked about that is part of that sense of culture. And,
Mhm.
in the meeting early on, when the head of the school, like after that, the game, the race, says, well, maybe we should just make drinking illegal.
Mm.
And what's a remark? Somebody says, well, we wouldn't have any students or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of, talks about that. So, it's this very, this film asks us to open up, to get out of our humdrum lives, but it doesn't deal with like, how do you stop it from getting to the point when you're pissing on yourself at home.
Yeah. Which I thought was in a way really brilliant, because I don't think anybody has an answer to that. I mean, we're always looking, I think like universally as a people, we're always looking toward escapism. We want to not live our lives. Like we
Mm.
disappear into social media, we disappear into uh now, virtual reality, games, anything. You want to leave behind what you currently have to exist in.
Mhm.
But nobody has an answer for what do you do when it overwhelms and submerges you.
Mm.
Like none of us know. I mean, we have like hints. Oh, you should, you know, contact somebody or seek help. But like, how do you get to the place of knowing that you need to seek help? And then also, even if you have a friend, it's difficult for sometimes that friend to tell you that you need help and
And
to,
even going to help, what does that mean? For some
yeah,
people, therapy is help. For some people, that doesn't work.
yeah.
What is like a good, and it's like, some people want to escape their world, but some people want to enrich their world. You know, for this
Hmm.
character,
Hmm.
teaching well was important, and clearly teaching well sort of left his brain for a while. He
Yeah.
was on like autopilot.
Hmm.
And anybody who's taught long enough will sort of be conscious of when you're just sort of saying the things you've always said. And mostly for me, I'm sure for you as well, you're teaching well when you can look into your students' eyes and see what they're doing and how they're doing
Hmm.
it and how they're reacting to it. And which makes this year even that much more difficult, because if they're not turning their cameras on, and some kids, sometimes they have people at home and they're they don't have a very good internet connection. I mean, it's not like people are avoiding me, or maybe they are, I don't know. um, but it does, make it so, hard for us to move on. But I think there is this distinction between just escaping to get out of the reality, whether it's the political reality of the humdrum world that the pandemic has put us in, and also to be inspired, because I think they're
Mhm.
different. One is like alcohol helps you run away from a problem, but creating work or being inspired by work, really makes a difference. I was at that performance last week that Caramia and Teatro did a couple weeks ago. It was just really energizing. Just like, and it was like they're walking down, and then they had this event that happened, this performance in front of the Latino Cultural Center. But being with people and experiencing something is just, it just, we are all so much in the point when we physically need to see and hear and be out in the world. And I think that indeed makes a difference. Carol, you have Carol says 14 units is equivalent to 5 pints of beer, for instance.
Okay, good, because I thought this young man was like Iron Man and could just drink everybody under the table. But okay.
Raquel says it's also a Danish art film, not a Lifetime film. I agree with Danielle. It's not a simple don't drink message. I mean, it's not at all a don't drink message. I mean, it's not at all preachy. I mean, it's kind of the drinking can help. There are other things you can do to get inspired. I'm not going to promote any one over any other thing. I would say seeing a good movie could inspire you to teach better, or seeing a great dance performance. I think, seeing art does do some of that as well. Seeing a film like this inspires us, takes us out of our spirit and helps us see something else. But it's like in the beginning, they're doing really well, or maybe in the first third, and then they decide to up the ante. And that's really where like the danger comes in. And particularly with alcoholism and, shall we say, cocaine and many other drugs, the problem is some people have a personality that cannot like put a governor on it.
Right.
And you don't know. Here you had 4 people, one person clearly couldn't handle it. I mean, he looked like he was drinking before everybody else was. Oh,
Yeah.
looks like you have Orange Kitty there.
Yeah, this is Jack. He wanted to become a part of the conversation.
Yes, I happen to have a fondness for orange kitties.
Oh.
I had one named Sammy who passed away, but that's another story for another day. So what other parts of this film inspired you?
There, I mean, obviously the end sequence, from the last dinner that they have all the way to the end, I thought was just probably some of the most like uplifting narrative that I have seen in a long time. And it was oddly like all of a sudden just very feel good. Like I was just like, okay, this is a film that really shows trauma and grief and also shows the other side of it, that you can overcoming it, moving through it, living your life, it can continue. I thought that the character of Specs, that was my, he's such a small, like, he appears only a few times, but this little child to me was just like the epitome of what the film also was about.
Yeah.
Very shy little boy who just needed, for someone to recognize him.
I mean, as a performer, I mean, this kid has what, 3 scenes maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
And each one of them, it just is so great. I mean, when they're singing the national anthem, wherever it is, and the kid just grabs his hand.
It broke my heart.
you
Broke
know,
my heart.
and it, in a sense, it was what both of them needed at that moment,
Hmm. Yeah.
because this guy has nobody but his dog, and his dog, speaking of
Yeah.
his dog who he had to lift out of the house and sort of start the process of doing it. What dedication.
Yes.
um but other than that, he really had nobody, and
Hmm.
Specs had nobody.
Hmm.
And then he scores the goal. But then, of course, in the end, when he holds up the flower and takes the rose and he puts it in the hearse, and then he
Hmm.
goes over and he starts to sing the song again, that same song, and all the kids join. And it's like such a powerful moment in the film,
Hmm.
where now he was the one who was like nobody paid attention to, and now he was a leader.
Yeah. It was a beautiful moment. I thought his turn, like it's, there's all these like subplots that are happening in this film, but I thought
Mhm.
that that turn for Specs was really, I think, a parallel to Mads's character. Like that's that young version. That's that id and ego. And
Mhm.
I just thought it was a like lovely moment. But I do agree with you, Raquel, as well. Like I I love that this film was about the relationship of these four men, and it was a non-competitive relationship. They were just friends, there for each other to help each other out. And it was nice to see something where men, um this other side of masculinity and machoism is shown, where it was also just kind of deleted, and it was just like, these are people, and they uh, are sensitive, and they are suffering, and there's a lot that goes on inside of the male brain, but just the brain in general. And I think it's important to welcome and see those stories, and sometimes we don't get to see that a lot in American film or American theater or television shows.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so I appreciated that a lot.
yeah, that they were good friends to each other,
Yeah.
and there for each other. And for some of them, for two of them, they had no spouse, no partner,
Mhm.
and were pretty much alone. I did find the guy who had the wife who had a lot of money. What an interesting world he lives in, where you can't get a night's sleep because the kids will pee on him,
Yeah.
and his wife is forever leaving. It's like every scene she's at the door. I'm going to my parents. I'm going to my sisters. I'm going here. Like, have fun. Are you drunk again? Have fun.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what a strange family dynamic that is. Totally, totally bizarre. And um, and then, of course, as soon as you knew that she said, and fresh cod, make sure you get fresh cod, and they're all saying fresh cod, fresh cod, you knew the fresh cod was not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was also a very real scene too, a little sad that you knew he wasn't going to get the cod, that wasn't going to work out. And then just like watching the destruction in the grocery store, I was like, this is some intense foreshadowing for what is about to happen to these men.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like interesting, the mirrors that were placed throughout this film I that caught me by surprise. Like I just sometimes I wasn't paying attention to that, and so whenever they would slip in, I was like, oh, I'm this is unexpected.
Yeah. That's why it's good to see a
Okay,
film more than once.
because at times I couldn't tell what the film was going to turn to. Yeah, and it was. I mean, I've watched it like 3 times so far. So, and I will probably watch it again. That's how
Yeah.
much I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and then so the scene when they're in the store and they're fumbling around, there really does sort of get a sense of like, this is where they are totally out of control. And it's not just that they fall down and knock stuff over and are totally out of control.
Mhm.
And then like right after that, they're like trying to fish for a fresh cod.
Yeah.
It's just like so absurd and crazy, and like they're trying to, in a very drunk way, think that they're going to be able to find
To catch this fish.
right. And but it also kind of sets up the boat, and the
Hmm.
boat, and which then sets up, the end. And the end, aside from the part that you were talking about before. So yes, all that stuff with the dance is really good. But there are two things that are happening just before that that are also very powerful. To
Hmm.
have, him dying and going through that whole process and going um, into the church where there aren't very many people there, in a very sad way, and
Yeah.
there aren't many people there to sort of hold that, and then have the little kid, and then you have the sort of then there's the graduation where you see, which mirrors the very beginning with all the drinking of the kids, and the kids are like totally like out of control.
Hmm.
I mean, totally like out of control, out of control, out of control. Drinking enormously, but with no negative consequences to them. And then there's that great thing where they're like tossing one of the guys up in the air, which is great. Have any students ever tossed you up in the air?
Um, no,
No, nobody's done that
no,
to me either, and I hope
no.
that doesn't happen to me. Really, it's okay. We don't need that experience in our life. Okay, somebody from Facebook says film is an orgy of um, consciousness group of people that are supposed to know themselves. They are teachers. They start to learn really who they are on the same plate as the kids who are teaching them. The finale shows that they are growing the same as the kids in the beginning scene. So yeah,
Mhm.
indeed, they are graduating, and they're all like drinking
Mhm.
together, and
Yeah.
there is that sense of that, and which also reminds me of the scene with the what was the guy's name who was scared as hell of doing his finals. Um,
Oh, the one that had to repeat his exams.
and
Yeah.
then with the help of a little bit of alcoholic beverage was able
Yeah.
to get it through it. Now, Danielle, have you ever taken an exam with a drink?
No, and I would never tell anybody to do that. When that happened, I was like physically agitated by that all because I was like, I cannot believe you. It's one thing if you are going to go through the experiment with your friends as adults,
Right.
but please don't advise a young human being and a student to do that. I mean, it's one of those mirrors that kind of always kept appearing for me. It was like, for lack of better terms, like good versus evil. Was like that devil on his shoulder, and he was like, it worked for me, so
Yeah.
maybe I should pass on this knowledge. But it's like that's where you have to stop and say, I need to be the responsible figure here, and I need to be the mentor, and this isn't the appropriate time to do that. But because of just all that was going on psychologically for that character, he made a choice that, I'm sure if there was, those extra scenes at the end that we didn't get to see, would be one of those moments where it was like, I messed up. This was not part of the experiment. I involved a subject who was not a willing participant
But he
in
was very
our.
he was very proud of that. They had that nice
Yeah.
little like, thank you so much. That was so great, and you saved my life. And then you can imagine like a say 18-year-old watching this movie because we told them to for this very screening, and they got exams coming up because exams are indeed coming up,
Yeah,
and people are stressed.
they are. They
Students
are.
are stressed. I mean, you were in graduate school, you remember stress.
Oh, I mean, I made choices as a grad student that that's for another conversation as well.
Well, I'd like to hear those one day. Um, but yes, and so how does one deal with stress? And this is not
Yeah.
this is not a role model for you on how to behave. Indeed, one of the characters who chose this path did die from that choice.
Yeah.
But the key is to be open to experience and find a way to control what happens.
Yeah. Which I think what I found very strong about this film is that it's not a morality story.
Mhm.
It's just a presentation of thoughts and ideas and opinions. And as the viewer, you can
Choose your own ending.
choose your own ending, choose your own adventure through this.
Truly choose your own adventure.
Yeah. I mean, I really like, it's like considered a comedy drama, but I would also say it's like this philosophical adventure that we all, in some way or another, I have a feeling that a lot of people have encountered a similar situation like this, where
Yeah,
you want to remember how to feel again.
it really, to me, doesn't fit in a genre.
Hmm.
I don't know what, people who market a film have to try to figure that out.
Yeah.
But and that this won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film, I think is just really, kind of outstanding. And again, for the director, who was like one of the founders of the Dogma movement. I don't know how much you know about the Dogma 95 movement.
Mm-mm.
So he and Lars von Trier and a bunch of other people in 1995 wrote came up with this movement called Dogma 95. Raise your hand out there if you know what this is. I'm forever teaching. So Dogma 95, they had this vow of chastity, and it was one of these things very much like the French New Wave of throwing off the artifice of filmmaking. So there was no guns, no
Mm.
special effects, natural lighting. And so they really wanted things to to be about story and acting, and to really get sort of back to the basics.
Mm.
And the film that Fidman made, was called Celebration. And it was probably, of the Dogma 95 movement, the most well-known film. And it really sort of was very influential. When I was teaching during that time, like my students all watched it, and we all thought about just about everybody I knew from that era created a Dogma 95 assignment. So no lights, no, just actors and story, and go out and do it. And it really kind of shifted people's attention and way
Mm.
to look at things. And then from 1995 to now, like that's like quite a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was a young guy back then, and now he's probably the age of his main actor here.
Mm.
And this film, while he's made a bunch of other films, none of his films has broken through in the way that Celebration did. And this is like a transformational thing in his life now. I mean, winning the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film, he has great possibility of what he can do in his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
The things that he can do are substantially better.
Yeah, I'm excited to see another film by him. But now I will look up Celebration and I will watch that one as
Yeah.
well. It was beautiful. Like, this film was beautifully directed, shot. Like, it's like everything you want in a film was here
Yeah,
for
and
me.
I would say also just look up Dogma 95 and read the vow of chastity. It's just kind of an interesting construct. Also similar to like Italian neorealism. Whenever
Okay.
things have artificiality has gone too far, there's generally this movement against that, and to try to, and it's usually all within a certain geography that
Mm.
does that. But and some of those works are just really fascinating. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for
Oh,
spending an hour with you. The hour
yeah.
has flown by.
Yeah.
um, and it's so great to get your perspective on this. It's just been really, really wonderful.